Human-looking creatures seen by the locals. Giovanni Caritiana, a 27-year-old Indian, says there is no doubt that the Mapinguari is real. He claims to have seen one about 3 years ago as he was hunting in the jungle near an area that his tribe calls the Cave of the Mapinguari. It was coming towards the village making a big noise, he said in a recent interview on the tribe's reservation in the western Amazon. It stopped when it got near me. That's when the bad smell made me dizzy and tired. I fainted, and when I came to, the Mapinguari was gone. Caritiana's father, Lucas, confirmed the account. He said that when his son took him back to the site of the encounter, he saw a clear pathway where the creature had departed. He said it looked as if a boulder had rolled through the area and knocked down all the trees and vines. Another witness, 70-year-old Jayo Batista Acevedo, says that he saw a Mapinguari 20 years ago after a 45-day canoe ride to the nearest village. I was working down by the river when I heard a scream, a horrible scream. Suddenly, something that looked like a man came out of the forest, all covered in hair. He was walking on 2 legs, and thank God he did not come towards us. I will always remember that day. Reputed to be the wildest, rarest, most mysterious, and terrifying denizen of the rainforest, nearly every Indian tribe in these regions has a word for this creature, which can usually be translated to the roaring animal or to the fetid animal. Its most common name is the Mapinguari, but it's also known as the Capilobo, Juma, or simply Bicho for beast. Descriptions of the beast also vary widely. The body of a giant bear, the backward turned claw feet like those of a giant armadillo. The face appears to be monkey or even human-like, trailing a cloud of flying beetles, and a roar like endless thunder. In some areas, the creature is said to have had 2 eyes, while other accounts talk of it only having 1, like the Cyclops of Greek mythology. Some versions mention a gaping, stinking mouth in the monster's belly, through which it consumes humans unfortunate enough to cross its path. Some legends even attribute its power to the supernatural, and even speech. Classic stories describe it as a werewolf-like Indian shaman who discovered the secret of immortality, but paid for it by being transformed into a horrible monster. To see it is to come face to face with the devil himself. But all accounts agree that the creature is tall, 2 meters, or about 7 feet. Its upright bulk disconcertingly human-like when it stands on 2 legs. It emits a strong, extremely nauseating and disabling smell, like garlic and fetid peccary, and that it has thick, matted red or black fur, covering a hard exoskeleton that makes it all but impervious to bullets and arrows. Though the physical descriptions of the Mapinguari may resemble the Sasquatch of North America or the Yeti of Himalayan lore, the comparisons stop there. Unlike its counterparts elsewhere, the creature does not flee from human contact, but aggressively hunts down the hunter, turning the tables on those who do not respect the jungle's unwritten rules and limits. Often, the Mapinguari gets revenge on people who transgress, who go where they shouldn't go, or harvest more animals or plants than they can consume, or set cruel traps, says Marcio Souza, a prominent Brazilian novelist and playwright who lives in the Manaus and often draws on Amazon history and folklore in his works. The folklore here is full of tales of close encounters with this Bigfoot of the Amazon, stories so widespread and so consistent in their details that in recent years a few scientists have organized expeditions to try to find it. One in particular, David Oren, a Harvard and Yale-trained biologist and ornithologist, thinks the fabled monster is not only real, but actually a living species of giant ground sloth believed to be extinct for 8,000 years. The giant sloth, or Megatherium, was one of the largest mammals to walk the earth, bigger than an elephant. These ground sloths were members of the South American group Xenarthra, which contains modern tree sloths anteaters, and armadillos. Fossil evidence is abundant and widespread in South America, having been found as far south as Chile and as far north as Florida. It is quite clear to me that the legend of the Mapinguari is based on human contact with the latest of these ground sloths, says Oren, former director of research at the Geldi Institute in Belém, at the mouth of the Amazon River. We know that these extinct species can survive as legends for hundreds of years, but whether such an animal still exists or not is another question. Oren is not the first scientist to reach this conclusion. In the late 1800s, an Argentinian paleontologist named Florento Ameghino took an eyewitness story of a strange creature seen in southern Patagonia to also be an indication of a living ground sloth. Indeed, it wouldn't be the first time a creature previously assumed extinct by scientists, yet familiar to locals, was found alive and kicking. About 25 years ago, the Chacoan peccary was seemingly a mythical animal, thought to have gone extinct within the last few hundred years. But against all odds, this very large species of South American peccary was discovered very much alive in Paraguay. Indeed, an even larger and hence so-called giant peccary was discovered in Brazil in 2000. New species are being discovered in this part of the world with great frequency, so much so that no less than 10 species of monkeys were discovered in the Amazon in the last decade. Given that a lot of the Amazon, the greatest expanse of rainforest in the world, remains unexplored, especially one that's rich in ground sloth fossils, is it so hard to believe that such beasts could still live there, unknown to science? The basis for Oren's hypothesis is largely down to first-hand accounts from a couple of hundred people who claim to have seen the Mapinguari, and a handful who say they've had direct contact with them. Amazon dwellers year after year describe to him stories of mothers with offspring, their seasonal movements to find water, and even what their feces looked like. But it is not just anecdotal evidence that he's collected. Oren has taken video footage of clawed trees, taped what he believes are creatures' minute-long thunderous roars, and made molds of large round footprints with backward-facing claws. He's also collected hair and 22 pounds of feces, which are undergoing analysis, and is hoping the DNA in the hair can be compared to the DNA from the blood of living sloths. Others point to the fact that nearly every Indian tribe in the Amazon, including those who have had no contact with each other, have a word for these creatures, and that their descriptions are so remarkably similar that it can't be a coincidence. Glenn Shepard Jr., an American ethnobiologist and anthropologist based in the Manaus in the central Amazon, said he had been among the skeptics who considered the Mapinguari a rural legend until 1997, when he was doing research among the Machigana people of the far western Amazon in Peru. Tribal members he questioned there about local wildlife all mentioned a fearful sloth-like creature that inhabited a hilly forested area in their territory. The mysterious death of a handyman from a small village near the town of Cihuatepeque in Honduras has caused numerous rumors that a chupacabra killed him. A farmer's assistant was found dead in February of 2019 after being attacked by a mysterious animal who sucked all of his blood out. Details of the incident are known only from the words of their neighbors. They say that the handyman got tired after a busy day of work and decided to take a break. He laid down in the shade of a tree next to the stones and took off his shoes. The unfortunate man did not notice that next to his resting place was the hole of some animal, and when he settled next to it, an unidentified animal jumped out of the hole and firmly gripped his bare foot. The animal didn't just bite the man. It began to suck the blood out of him, and soon the worker died from blood loss, right there on the spot. The corpse of the man was found later that night by his family, when they became worried after he did not come home from work, and they went out to look for him. According to his relatives, the body of the deceased was pale. There wasn't a single drop of blood left in it. No further details of this case are currently known. In 2009, in the district of Esparta, An unidentified predator killed 15 sheep. Local farmers immediately blamed the chupacabra for their death. In May 2017, something killed more than 35 domestic animals in the village of Monterey, and the locals were very scared. In April of 2019, several farmers stated that a chupacabra killed 30 of their cows in less than a month. Less than a month later, in March of 2019, another person died in the same way. The deceased was a young man named Giovanni, who went to a party in the city, and late in the evening he had returned to his village, but he never came home. For 3 days, frightened relatives searched for the young man throughout the district and finally found his lifeless body in an inaccessible mountainous area not far from his native village. Those who found his body immediately became puzzled by how he got there in the first place. There were no paths that led to the area. As they began to inspect the body to understand what he died from, to their horror, they realized that there was no blood in the body at all. Something had drained him completely of blood, just like the farmer before. There was nothing strange noted around the body, and there were no traces of any wild animals in the area. As one can imagine, residents of the region are on edge following this second puzzling death, and remarks made by a veterinarian brought in to consult on the livestock cases are likely to only exacerbate their fears. The veterinarian observed that whatever killed these animals left no evidence behind, yet it managed to enter a well-protected area and seemed to strike its victims with remarkable precision. The massive amount of blood seemingly consumed by this predator left the veterinarian baffled as to what kind of creature could be behind these attacks, and remarkably, he ultimately mused that we think this may be a supernatural being. The phenomenon of the chupacabra has been associated with the Vampiro de Maca from February of 1975, when a Puerto Rican legend tells of 15 cows, 3 goats, 2 geese, and a pig that were found with puncture marks in the Rocha Barrio suburbs of Maca. Later autopsies showed that the blood had been drained from their bodies. The incident made headlines, and police blamed the animal deaths on stray dogs. When a cow was found dead with the similar marks on its skull, a newspaper called the phenomenon El Vampiro de Maca. A series of isolated attacks took place on the island from 1992 until 1995. In March of 1995, there was a supposed chupacabra incident where 8 sheep were found dead. Their bodies were completely intact, but their blood had been drained. Their only visible wounds were puncture marks in their chest.